Hi, I'm Jeff Ray, your host for Economic Outlook. Welcome to our program. We hope you enjoy our show. Please make plans each week to join us as we discuss the region's most important economic development initiatives with a panel of experts. Elkhart County has long been a center for entrepreneurship and innovation and is one of the top manufacturing hubs in the country. Today we're giving you an inside look at all things Elkhart County as we sit down with Elkhart County leadership to give you insight on the projects that continue to drive their resurgence. Coming up on Economic Outlook. Elkhart County has a rich history of manufacturing and has long been thought of as an important hub for innovation and entrepreneurship. The RV industry gets a lot of attention, but there's so much more to the story. We're showcasing Elkhart County today and diving deeper into the projects that you should know more about and the places you should plan to visit. Joining me for that conversation are Elkhart County Commissioner Susie Wyrick and Chris Stager, the President and CEO of the Economic Development Corporation of Elkhart County. Welcome, good to have you both back.
Thanks to be here.
Yeah, we're excited about all the things we're seeing, and we thought what a perfect time to bring you back in to be guest and give us a snapshot of kind of things happening in Elkhart County. Before we start though, Susie, let me come your way. So you're an elected official, Elkhart County Commissioner. For folks who aren't sure, remind us a little bit about Commissioner and the important role you play there.
So commissioners are the executive and legislative branch in Elkhart County. That's not the same elsewhere. We're a board of three. Our responsibilities are basically public safety and economic development. And so we focus a lot on making sure that all avenues lead towards solid workforce development and making sure that we can supply the industry and help the industry grow in the area.
Great, and how many years have you been doing that now?
7. I can't believe that was almost a stumper, but
wow,
yeah.
All right, good. Well, thank you. We appreciate your leadership, and we see you on so many things working in the community, so we're grateful to have you here today. Chris, you're no stranger as well. You've been here once or twice in your time. So for folks who have forgotten or aren't quite sure, tell us a little about the Elkhart EDC and what it does.
The EDC of Elkhart County is a public-private partnership, and we're the lead economic development organization for Elkhart County. We've been in existence about 22 years, and we work largely with manufacturing logistics clients, but like all of us that are involved in economic development, talent development, and employee attraction and growth is the large part of what we do now.
Great. Susie, let me come your way. So just for a high level, I think elected officials in particular always get the chance to say, here, the state of the economy is such. So give us a quick state of the economy. What's the economy look like in Elkhart County these days?
You know, there's been a lot of pressure on the manufacturing industry. Obviously, we're over 50% manufacturing, which is the highest probably in the nation of any one community. And we've been known as the bellwether for the economy nationally as well. And I think one of the things that I'm a little bit pleasantly surprised that we're seeing an uptick in some of our manufacturing. It's not as low as it was. Our unemployment rate increased in 23, right? And now I think we're stabilizing, and we're going to see some people called back and some jobs back on the move. So that's kind of an interesting perspective that I was surprised to see so soon, right? One of the other stats that I learned recently was the distribution of the type of employment we have. I mean, I mentioned manufacturing is huge. Everybody knows manufacturing is huge in Elkhart County. But the second highest area of workforce is needed in the service and food service, specifically industry. So that was kind of a great prompt about what quality of place is looking like and some options for our residents.
Great. Chris, you're working with companies, or both companies that are expanding in Elkhart County now that are thinking about growing or expanding. You're talking to companies who are thinking about coming to the areas. Give us a kind of follow-up state of the economy from your perspective. What are you seeing?
Well, I think the natural correlation that most people would make that when the the industry slowdown occurred, that we wouldn't see investment at the levels we have. Last year was probably in the top 5 investment in Elkhart County, and what was very unique about last year was this is the first time in our memory where our personal property investment was higher than our real property, which means we're starting to see more advanced uses of automation and higher value technology investments.
And we were already pretty high on that.
We are.
With our overall robotics per capita, per workforce capita.
Yeah, maybe share that stat, I think, or that fact. I think last time we were here, we talked about it.
That was a sort of old information,
yes.
But in 2017, the Brookings Institute indicated to us that we had the highest per capita robots of anywhere in the United States.
Yeah, and I think that's, we teased in the opening, kind of the history of innovation and entrepreneurship. It's like people make things, right? And so let's talk for a second RV. Just because we can't not touch on it, because it's like a big, but we tease that RV is such a big, important part of your economy. There's a lot more to that. People always want to know what's going on in RV, right, for the economy. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in the RV industry now.
Well, I think the industry, they project sales, and I believe this year they were saying that they anticipated around 300 to 315,000 units. As Susie referenced, though, it appears that the selling season is off to a pretty good start. So we're certainly seeing, and we're excited about that, and we're excited to see that it's reflective to some degree in our unemployment rate. We termed the term a soft landing, but really, if we compare this to the recession that we went through 10 or 12 years ago, it has been a much softer landing for Elkhart County.
It's interesting, as we've had RV experts with us before, even the 315 is less than they've done in recent years, but still probably one of their most productive years in history. I think people forget that. The boom that we had for a few years sort of moved the number way up here, but 315 is still a pretty good number.
Yeah, and COVID really kind of really skewed those numbers. Obviously everybody was homebound, and there were a lot of steps taken at the same time that we were in COVID. The Great American Outdoors Act was passed by President Trump, so it drove a lot of people that were seeking a way to get out and about, and really drove those sales hard. And I guess you could say we're right-sizing again, and I'm not sure that we know exactly where that's at, but I am encouraged by the recent information we've received.
Great, sounds good. Susie, I'm going to come back your way. So you talked about one of your principal focuses is economic development, that public safety and economic development, two of the primary focuses. You've got sort of a broad selection of communities in Elkhart County. So give us just ways government can help influence that. Some of the things that you get, or some of the ways you get involved in this to sort of help drive economic activity there.
So I've talked a lot about, in the past, even the last time I was on here, about quality of place development and what that looks like. And quality of place to everybody is a little different. Somebody, it's economic attainment. Someplace it's a different place to live. Someplace it's a new trail, right, or a new ice cream shop. And apparently the ice cream shops and the food industry has made their appearance well known in Elkhart County, which is fantastic. And it's definitely been fun.
Yes.
Definitely been fun. But some of the things that we are doing to touch on the investment in the workforce directly, as a government, we invested in the Ivy Tech Flex Lab, and through our TIF dollars have helped that come to fruition with the other investors in making that an option for workforce training. The jobs that we're seeing are still requiring some skills, some basic skills, but at the same time, we're providing an opportunity for training locally, so hopefully they stay locally. And then we also have some opportunities with housing development. Obviously, housing is a national issue, and locally we are getting ready to kick off some projects in some of the smaller communities individually. So Napanee is bringing a housing development called the Wellfield Housing Community, and I think their goal is 100 houses in the first, 100 residences in the first phase. And then there's a larger one in Goshen coming up called Cherry Creek. And their first goal, their first phase, they're hoping to start in 2024, but about 288 residences. And then with the ultimate goal of about 1,000 to 1,400, depending on what the condo market looks like towards the next phases in development. So in the next probably 4 years, we should have a significant opportunity for new housing, which then will help us with our increased numbers in workforce demand.
Great, I think it ties in well. Just a few weeks ago, as you know, we focused on housing on the show. I know you both are regular watchers here, but what we were talking about was sort of this slow recovery from the housing crisis of 2008, the need to build some inventory. Chris, let's stay in housing for a second and talk about talk a little bit about the need, if you will. I think people have a hard time understanding the need and why you both need to be focusing on something like that. Just give us some housing perspective.
Well, obviously it's a national problem. In Elkhart Community's case, our last statistics said we were importing about 35,000 workers a day. And you look back historically at why that happened. One of the reasons was we just didn't have stock, and the stock that we had, I think there was 20 years that we didn't see a significant growth in housing. So to retain our top talent, we obviously got to freshen that up and keep trying to drive opportunities for all incomes and all types of people to feel welcomed into the community.
Yep. Let's, Susie touched on workforce, so let's stay in the workforce space for just a few minutes. You mentioned Ivy Tech and kind of the Flex Lab and some of what they're doing there. Obviously, as we were talking earlier with robotics and all the things, there is a need to have a skilled workforce there. Maybe both touch a little bit on even the things you're trying to do start to finish, right? You're trying to, at a very young age, get kids on a path to understand what careers look like. At an old age, you're retraining folks who may have been in different industries. Talk about how important that workforce piece is, because I think I know in my old days of economic development, I was worried about property and water lines and gas lines, but workforce is all we talk about. How about we talk for a few more minutes about the workforce piece?
So the workforce piece starts basically with schools, right? I mean, the initial opportunities that the kids have from kindergarten all the way and up, and we're looking at some opportunities that talk about daycare and increasing some of those services available in our county, as well as then supporting the schools moving forward. The state legislature this year made a primary goal of, I believe it's a third grade reading level attainment, if I said that appropriately. And so with that then starts on the career pathways and refocusing all the kids. And I know that the school districts in Elkhart County, the public school districts specifically, are focusing on some career pathways to make sure that we have the workforce that we need and we have a robust workforce replenishing itself on a regular basis. So the investment continues through those partnerships as well as the partnerships with the corporations. Goshen College has a robust partnership in developing nursing staff and some other healthcare workers, as does Beacon involvement in some of that, Beacon Healthcare System. So there's a lot of collaboration going on to make sure that we have the workforce that we so desperately need.
And for you, this becomes a really important piece of your pitch, right? As you're talking about companies who want to grow here, or companies who want to come. Talk about it from your perspective.
Well, I think there's a couple points I'd like to make. The state has been great in some ways in rewarding us with some dollars to support that. It's been interesting, and speaking more on the development side of Ivy Tech. So Elkhart Community Schools, an example, led the state in dual credit attainment, which most people wouldn't naturally think off the top. So, and Ivy Tech does vet out all the dual credit across the state. So we're very proud of that statistic. And one of the the career pathways that we're starting, and we've had many events that we're taking 5th, 6th, 7th graders into manufacturing facilities to show them opportunities. Then oftentimes the perception is a dirty business, manufacturing, but that perception needs to change, because a lot of automation's out there. You could be an engineer, an accountant, quality control professional. There's quite a lot of opportunity available in manufacturing, and the projections ongoing are a little bleak right now, and we need to keep driving back. If we want things that are made in America, then we need to reestablish us as a manufacturing power again.
And to touch a little bit on the manufacturing days piece, I had the opportunity once to go along and shadow some of those, and it was actually a very well-run program as a collaboration, again, with the schools and our businesses. The schools brought the kids in for the day, and they rotated through the different avenues of a business, and they had some great speakers. So I was down at the Smoker Craft plant years ago when they did this, and they even brought up some of their female welders, and they talked about how anybody is trainable to whatever you want to do, and they did talk about all the different options, whether it was in accounting or different Salesforce options, but as well as in the manufacturing side. So if you're not looking for that college degree, we have some great homegrown opportunities for you here.
Great. Guys, we're going to take a quick break here in the studio. We're going to go out into the field. George Lepiniotis, my co-host, is out. George, let me toss it to you.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm downtown Elkhart, and I am actually joined by your counterpart over here in Elkhart County, Levon Johnson, President and CEO of the Greater Elkhart Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, sir.
Levon, thank you for being with us.
That's my absolute pleasure.
And I know that you know Jeff well, and I'm sure you're better at being a chamber president than he is. Don't tell him I said that.
Well, I don't know about that.
But
he gets on all the special lists.
He does get good lists. But here today, you get to talk to me, and I'm excited to be here because Elkhart is such a unique place for our regional economy, but also for our national economy. I mean, you've heard so many people talk about Elkhart is the canary in the coal mine when it comes to our nation's economic future. But before we get to kind of that big part of it and some of the other exciting stuff happening here, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're an Elkhart native.
Yep, born and raised, and went to Indiana State University, go Sycamores, and came back here after college and started working for Elkhart Community Schools. I was a high school teacher at Elkhart Memorial, and then assistant principal at Elkhart Central High School, and head football coach, sponsored all sorts of things, ended up in central office work, and my last job there was the supervisor of corporate and community partnerships, so 25 plus years with Elkhart Community Schools.
And what made you decide that leading the chamber would be right for you, and what attracted you to that opportunity?
Well, I've switched jobs within the school system, but I've always tried to switch for impact. And this was an opportunity to take what I was doing at the end of my career in education and expanding on that, and really helping Elkhart to continue to be a quality place and be in a place where I could have impact and work with a lot of other people and a lot of other industries besides education that are doing that same work. And at the end of the day, it's all about relationships, and I love people and I love the community I'm in, and so this was a great place to do that from.
That's awesome. Well, and you talk about impact, and I find that such an interesting concept, because I think that most folks go to work and there's a false, I mean, of course we all work for money, but we also work to make an impact on our lives and the lives of others. Absolutely. So when we think about the chamber and we think about its role in Elkhart, what would you say the chamber's role is in Elkhart's broader community?
Yep, absolutely. I think the big thing really is I look at the chamber as a community development organization, and we just happen to do that through business. And I think we've got a lot of people that are in that community development work, and they do it through the framework, whether it be healthcare or education or whatever else. But our focus is on business, and how do we make sure that we've got a healthy business environment that allows business to grow in this space, that allows them to employ more people, that increases the quality of life in this place. And ultimately, that's where we want to be and really focus in on that work.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of that Elkhart business, we all know that the RV industry is the primary Elkhart business, but there are so many others. But before we get to the others, let's talk about the RV industry. It is a major employer. It has seen some stellar years. How has that industry really shaped and defined Elkhart, in your opinion?
Well, I think over the course of Elkhart's history, what makes us quite unique is we reinvent ourselves constantly, and we've done a great job of marketing ourselves as the RV capital of the world. That's absolutely true. And we do employ a lot of people in that industry. And we know that coming out of COVID, we had really spectacular years where we were, I think, a couple years in a row at 600,000 units were headed out. But I think even in that time period, the leaders in the RV industry would say that's not sustainable, and there is a place where we need to be. And so right now we're in a situation where we're, I'll say, market adjusting, and we'll get back to normal. And all indications are early on that we're starting to climb back to where we need to be, but there are definitely challenges in that. But I will take that core industry and continue to grow that industry, but how do we diversify and make sure that while the RV industry is growing, it's also a percentage of the growth that's happening and not all of the growth.
Yeah, and the funny thing is you talk about those highs, those peaks of 2021 post-COVID when people were reinventing vacations and reinventing the RV industry, and RV manufacturers couldn't keep up. It almost was all encompassing, right? All consuming, employees, talent, other resources. It became almost, like you said, unsustainable. What are those other industries that you're looking to encourage? Where do you really see growth next for Elkhart?
Yep. So again, we're a manufacturing town, and we have absolutely bought into that. So the idea is when we think about nationally, the conversation about bringing industry back into to the country, we're set and ready to do that. We've got the skilled labor force to take on those challenges as automation becomes more important. But we look at our role in healthcare, in plastics, in aluminum, in corn dogs, in Febreze, and I mean it goes on because this is a place where we make things, and this is a country that needs things made, and we're primed and ready to do that work.
Yeah. Final thought here. Would you say that not only the skill that has been built in the county, but also the infrastructure is there, right? I mean, Elkhart does find itself in a unique geographic place, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and that plays to our favor from a manufacturing supply chain and getting things back out. We know that we're only a day's drive away from 70% of the population in this country, which is puts us in a great spot. And the state continues to invest in infrastructure in this area, and you can see that by the roads that lead into here and the scope of where people come to work from.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for showing us around this great facility. Jeff, back to you in the studio. I was only joking. You're both great presidents, and you're both doing amazing things to promote our region's economy and continuing to make sure it's strong and stable.
George, thank you. Appreciate the inside look at some things happening over there in Elkhart County. Chris, Susie, thank you for continuing our conversation. Susie Weigert, County Commissioner, Chris Steger from the Elkhart EDC. In our last, part of the segment here, we touched briefly on quality of place. Susie mentioned how important that was. Chris, I think it feels like a newer thing in economic development. It wasn't as critical, but it's really critical now. Touch a little bit on quality of place and why that's so important.
Well, obviously, if we look statistically at our region, we graduate something under over 39,000 college students within 100 miles of here. And, we had to have better amenities to retain them. They want the things that they can get in the city and more of a feel. So I think most of the communities now could start to see the impacts of things like the aquatic center. We're hearing about from the original Regional Cities project, the double tracking of the South Shore. Improvements are going on the trails, and which I guess I could lead that over to you and let Susie take it from here. But we're starting to see those things most of them are complete, and now we're just starting to see the utilization of them just really going through the roof. The aquatic center is just an amazing thing to watch every morning. I drive to work between 6 and 9 o'clock, and the parking lot's full. Right. I just think it's fantastic because. Before we didn't have that. 3 years ago, we didn't have that for the community. And I think if we really want to retain our top talent, we have to have better amenities than what we have.
And a chance now to double down on that potentially with some state funds to continue to do more of those projects. Susie, talk a little bit about quality place and why that's such a critical. As you're trying to bring people here, bring businesses here, get people to stay here. Talk about the role.
So in the last maybe 5 to 10 years, the job market has shifted to where the people are, and the people want to be where they want to be. So they can work from anywhere, and we want them to choose here. So we've made an active decision to start vamping up our placemaking and drawing attention to the quality of place. And I don't think you can talk about that without talking about our parks development and our trails development. Elkhart County still struggles having as much park area per capita as we really should have, but bringing in those convening locations and adding in a lot more trails. Again, one of the best things about Elkhart County is our ability to collaborate. We have pulled in all the different communities. We've talked with and started working with an organization through the Community Foundation on developing trails. One of our most popular trails is the Pumpkin Vine Trails, and that was a 40-year project in the making, and we finally finished the last little piece. And now we're looking at other connectors across Elkhart County and maybe drawing some attention down to Napanee with these new housing divisions. Through the housing divisions, I know Cherry Creek has some great plans for connecting through there to other trails around the community. So we're really making some great strides in putting those things to work so people can enjoy the space.
So Chris, we're headed to this next phase. Leaders in Elkhart County are quickly thinking about how to maximize some state and local investment to potentially get some more dollars to do. What are some of the things on mind, or talk to us a little about Ready 2 and sort of what's happening in people's heads on that?
Well, obviously, Ready 2 is quality focused, but we've been blessed that the team that has put together our Regional Cities grant and then our Ready Grant 1, they did a wonderful job, and I guess I could say that we're probably in some cases the leader in best practices in the state, and we're working very closely with the state government on that program. So it doesn't give us a competitive advantage, I don't think, on the award side, but we understand the process better, and that funding is just variable, because many of these projects, we just need that extra bump to get them over the top financially, including the housing. That's one of those things that, if you look at the most affordable housing, the math on that doesn't work without some assistance. So Ready has been very valuable for that. And as Susie referenced, the quality of place things, those projects would not have happened. But what they did is it created collaboration, and it started a conversation, and it really engaged the private sector to become more part of the community, and that's what we really like is the biggest outcome. We're seeing much more collaboration between business and government.
Great. Susie, in our last minute and a half, so a broad audience listens and watches the show here. Some of them haven't been there for a while. Give them kind of a quick highlight, some things they should come and see and do or experience if they haven't been to Elkhart County for a while.
So there are so many fabulous trails to places. So I do have a bike and I don't mind riding on occasion, but more so I'm going to go ride towards that lunch or towards that ice cream. I might be a little food motivated.
The second time you mentioned ice cream.
I know, right? There's definitely some opportunity for that quality of place to involve whether just adults, whole families, or whatnot. And we have blue ways, we have greenways, we have opportunities abound for different avenues. And as Chris mentioned, some of them are inside. And we're looking at increasing that because we are a winter climate as well, right? And trying to make sure that we incorporate some different quality of place opportunities year round.
Right. Yeah, Chris, last word. I'll give you a chance. Anything else that our viewers should know about Elkhart County before we let them go?
Well, I just think it's a very unique place. I think people underestimate how many things that daily impact their lives are made in Elkhart County. Anything from Febreze to the RVs that go down the road, and I could go on and on.
Corn
But
dogs.
it's a very dynamic community, and we're looking forward to the future and continue that. The tradition of Elkhart that honors the past, but we want to keep it moving forward as well.
So we're grateful for both of your leadership. Thank you for the things that you're doing each day, and really grateful to have you here sharing those stories too. Our viewers love hearing about what's going on. We've through the years have had some great updates, whether it be Goshen or Elkhart or Middlebury or Napanee, whatever. So it's been fun. So thank you, and we'll look forward to having you back for further updates.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
That's it for our show today. On behalf of the entire team here at PBS Michiana WNIT, thank you for watching or listening to our podcast. To watch this episode again or any of our past episodes, you can find Economic Outlook at WNIT.org or find our podcast on most major podcast platforms. We also encourage you to like us on Facebook or follow us on X. I'm Jeff Ray. I'll see you next time.
This WNIT local production has been made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.